ظلمي إني تمت نصيحا شيء في أجلي
Mr. Toy, please
شيء
mute your mic.
أبعد في نصيحي أمنتها.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's wait like maybe 10 minutes for others to join. we are still here. Good evening, everyone, once again, and thank you all for joining. I'll be sharing my screen in a few minutes, in like 2 minutes. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay. So in our last class, okay. In our last class, we were working on is it this one? I don't think it's this one. So we were working on we started JS on the backend side, and we were able to create our first server, which we did npm run dev. Am I correct? Okay, we didn't do npm run dev. What we did was nodemon index.js, right? If you can remember, I mentioned that nodemon is a package, is an npm package that auto restarts our server whenever we make changes. And I also mentioned that npm is a package registry where you can go if you need any package that you want to use in your project. And also in our last class, we were able to create a basic request. We used Postman, create a new request to localhost 3000. And yes, we have this, which we did somewhere here. All right, this is making request to the base part, and it is a get request. Though here we didn't handle the type of request, but it is a get request. If we send a post request to, we should still get the same results. Any request we send, we should still get to the same results, unless we want to say and request.method is get. So that will limit it to only get requests. If I send a post request, we should have requested route doesn't exist. I believe everyone can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so today I want to introduce us to Express.js. 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 Express.js is an NPM package that creates your server. So most of the things you need for your server would already be here, and you'll be able to use it. So to start, we'll start by installing npm, by calling npm install express, which we can create a new terminal, npm install express, right? So what we'll be doing now is that everything we've done here, we'll be doing it with express. So let me just copy this and then say index.old.js. So we'll keep that as our backup, and then we can come to express and do a few things. Let's come to installation. Yeah. Okay, I think we should just start a new express project instead of writing this previous one. Right, so we can understand how to initialize a proper npm package, npm project, because this one we didn't start with npm, we only started with the index.js. So what I can do, I can come to, this is my terminal, I can go to my desktop. So I can create a new folder called I can create a new folder. So this is make directory, mkdir, make directory, and your app name. So if I say mkdir, dive Node.js Express, right? Now that directory is there. If I that directory is there, if I go to my desktop, you see I have this directory now. So that's about that. If I want to go inside that folder, I'll say cd dive Node.js Express, which is what we also have in this their documentation. So to create a package, to create a project, an npm project, to say npm init, right? The utility will walk you through creating a package.json file. It will only cover the most common items and tries to get sensible defaults. See npm help init for for definitive documentation on these fields and exactly what they do. Use npm install package afterwards to install the package and save it as a dependency in the packages.json. So it is asking for our package name of this project name. The default is dive Node.js Express. So if you press enter, it will work. Version default is 1.1.0. Press enter. Description, we can put dive Node.js Express projects, right? Entry point is index.js, just like we did here. Yes. Test command should be tests. I think test, yes. Git repository, we don't have that yet. Keywords, we don't have that yet. Author, we can say Ayomide Michael or Ayomide Oludare. License, we don't have any yet. And is this configuration okay by you? Yes, enter. So what we can do, I can create a new, I can open VS Code newly, and then this folder that we created, this .js Express, we can drag it to VS Code. And if you notice, inside it, we have just packages.json, right? And in it, we have the name of the project, the version, the description, right? The main, that's the main file, which is the entry point of the system, the scripts, so we can run some scripts here, and then we can, this is the author and the license, ICS. So yeah, what we need to do now is to install, at the moment we don't have any npm package here, right? So we are not installing anything. So let's go back to the documentation, entry point. So we've done this, guys. Now we want to install Express, right? Let's say npm install Express. Oh, not here, this one. Let me bring this one here so that we won't mix it up. Yeah. Okay. So now we can install npm. You can install Express, npm install Express. And Express is installed. If you check our packages.json and check dependencies, you see Express, right? We have Express 5.1.0. And if you check our node modules, we have all the packages here that Express depends on, right? Because in software development, one package depends on another one depends on another one. All right, so once we have that, we want to, now let's create Express Hello World. So the first thing we want to do is to create this file. This is our main file, which is index.js. Can everyone see my screen very well? Okay, which is the index.js, and then we'll import Express from Express. Don't forget, I mentioned here that if you want to be using imports like this, we have to make our system modular. So we can copy this type from packages.json and bring it maybe here, anywhere. So import Express from Express. We just want to do everything we did here. So instead of importing Node.js instead of importing HTTP from Node.js, we're importing Express. Why? Because Express already implemented this HTTP in their own system, in their own package rather. So all you have to do is just use Express, right? We check the documentation, we'll create an app. If you notice now, okay, here we don't have an app, but here we'll create an app. So let's say constant app, which is our application, is Express. That's a new Express. Express is an object. So see what I'm doing here. By calling this function, it is returning me an instance of Express, which means at the end of the day, my app will be an instance of Express. Are you getting me now? So once I have that, I can see the port of my application, just like we have here, is 3000, right? And then I can say app.listen to port. And at the end of the day, if the listening is successful, example app, let's say our app listening on ports, the name of the number of the ports, which is the same thing we did here. We say server is running on at so place. So if we come here and say npm run dev, I'm not sure that will run. We don't have a run script yet. But what we can do, we can say node index.js. So we can now see that our app is listening to port 3000. I think we stopped this one. Did we? We didn't stop it. So this is coming from our Express, right? Let's stop this one so it won't start confusing us. Okay, so this is now this response is coming from our Express. If I stop our Express application, right, and then run this, you can see it's saying it cannot connect to so ports. So let's start again, and our application is listening to port 3000. So because the reason we are getting this is an HTML page, and the reason we are getting this is because we don't have this route defined yet, right? So how do we define that route? Just like we did here. So what we did here is the same thing we'll be doing. We say, so if request.url is / and then request.method is get, we want to return a status code of we want the response to have a status code of 200. The header should be application.json, and then the response data is this, right? But in Express, that is not how we'll go about it. So all you have to do in Express is say app dot the method name. Is it a post method you want, or is it get? Is it put? Is it delete? Or is it patch? Right? But this time we want get. Now this expects what? This expects two attributes. One is the route that you are expecting it to be, and then the second one is a callback function of what will actually happen. Right? So what we can do, you can say the route is this, which is this, right? This get is this, and the callback function is everything we have here, right? So we can say let's expect a callback function, right? And inside the callback function, we have access to the requests and the response. Are you getting me? We have access to the request and the response. And what we can send, we can say response.send hello world, right? If I come back to my postman and send this, okay, we have to restart our server. Okay, now we have an error. So this is a Node.js syntax. It is not identified here. Let's just copy it out. Comment it out rather, and restart our server. Then send the request. We can now see hello world here. But if you check the response, the header of this response, the data, the content type is HTML, text HTML. And if you check the body, you see it's an HTML document, right? So how do we make it return JSON? We can say response.json, right? And I'm not sure this will work, but let's just try it. Right, if I send this, okay, I still have it still does work, and it is JSON, right? If we check the header again, we can see it is application.json. So we didn't have to manually set this. That one is gone. We didn't have to manually set the status code too, because the response was successful. It will give us 200 automatically. And then we want to return the data. We can just say, let's copy this data from here, remove the comments that are there, and then say response.json response data, right? And then let's restart our server and then send. So we have an error. Okay, response data is not defined, so we have to declare this variable. So it is constant. So if you check now, we have something displaying our error in the response, and that is an advantage of Express.js. So let's send this back. Now you can see our response is now structured the way we want it to be. It is JSON, the header is correct, right? So this thing we did here, this logic we have here is what we have here now. And if you want to make it advanced, you can just put the response here directly, and we are good. and we are good. So I'm going to remove this and send this back. We have everything still works. All right. So what else do we have? We have a get request to about to. So we can just come here and say app dot get about. It will also receive a callback function. Inside the callback function, we have access to the request and the response, right? Don't forget I said here, when we were using, what's it called? When we were using Node.js, the HTTP, I said, when we create a server with http.create server, we have access to the request and the response. So that's the same thing we are doing here. We have access to the request and the response, right? So let's just make it short. And this is a get request, right? And what do we have on the get request for about? We have these guys. So let's just copy and say response.json should be this, right? So if you go to about now, /about 404, let's restart our server. And then send the request, everything works. I don't want to be restarting server every time. So what do? I can just come here and say node-mon index.js. Yes, so every time I save, the server will restart. And what we can also do is to say in our scripts, we can say dev, right? So what should happen when we run dev? We want to say node-mon index.js, right? So if I close this, cancel this, and say npm run dev, everything still works. So what is happening behind this? In npm run dev will run this command. Are you getting me? So if you run npm run dev now, npm run dev, you should run this command. All right. So now that we have this, what else do we need? What else do we have there? So we have the login, which is a post request, right? I think that was this was where we got stuck the other day. We have a post request to log in, right? And here we have access to the request and the response, right? This is a callback function. So what did we do? We did a few things. First of all, we had a user, we had a constant user, right? And inside that, we're just sending the user and the response. So this is our response data. We can just come here and say return, or we don't need return. We can just say response.json, response data, right? So if I change our route to login, okay, cannot get login. So because the route we have is a post route, not get, we need to change this to post. So, sorry. And then send. Response data is not defined. Again, we have to declare this variable. It's a new variable, and then send. So everything still works. If I come back to JSON, I should still have everything the way I had it the way we had it the other day. And the rest of them, this 404 now, Express already handles that for us. And I'm not sure of 405. So we've done this example, right? Let's come here. So this way we created the Express application was the manual way, which was to install it manually. Where's it here? If you want to create an Express, if you want to create a project and you know, okay, this app I want to create is an Express app, is an Express project. Again, let's come to our terminal. How do I have this terminal here? I think it's supposed to be here. Yes. So terminal. let me come out of this folder. So cd dots will come out of the folder. Clear. I'm in my desktop folder now. So what do I want to do? I want to say npx express generator, right? So this is going to install. Okay, so it's already asking us. Need to install the following packages: express generator. Do you want to proceed? Press enter. So to install this package on our system, now that the package is installed, am I correct? Okay, it said directory is not empty, so I have to cancel this, right? Make directory, make new directory, make directory, express dive express auto, right? So I want to go inside that directory, cd dive express auto, yeah. And then I want to run this command again. So this time it won't be asking us to install first, I guess. Yes, it has created it. And we have a few folders. Let's open the application. Let's open the folder. So inside that folder, we have the package.json, we have the app.json, we have the package.json, we have the app.js, we have the public, we have the routes, we have the views, and we have the bin. So let's open this in VS Code. Let's open in VS Code. So this is it. This is the packages.json. All right. So we have some dependencies already installed for us. We have Express, we have HTTP errors, we have Morgan, we have cookie parser, let's check each of these packages for what they do. If I come to cookie parser, check here. Cookie parser header populates request.cookies in the object keyed by the cookies name. So this is just to manage our cookies and then debug this package. Okay, so this helps log our debugging message to the console. Yeah. And which one again? We know Express already. Let's check for HTTP errors. This was last edited 4 years ago. Okay, so we can create a direct HTTP error with the status code and the error message. Please log in to view this page. And Jade, what does Jade do? Jade is not here. Are you serious? Okay, so this Express, we may not be using this Express generator. It seems to be outdated. It seems to be outdated. The app structure created by the generator is just one of many examples. Blah, blah, blah. This seems to be very outdated. People don't use Jade as view engine again. All right, so let's just continue with the process we were working with, which was this one. So now we have our Express application running. So what we were trying to do the other day is to confirm that, okay, is to get the data they sent via the post request. I said, I mentioned that this is our response and this is the request. So in the request, you can send your header and your body, right? And that day we're trying to send a body of, I think, email to be, if I'm correct. Yes, I'm correct. And then password is password. Perfect. So let's send this. This still works, but we want to be able to capture, first of all, let's do something. We want to be able to capture the data that sent through the request and compare it to the user we already have. So what are we going to do? Let's go to the documentation again. Documentation. A moment, please. Okay, so because we are working with JSON, because the data they'll be sending here is JSON, we have to do something. We have to say our application at the top here before defining our route. We have to say our application, which is the app, should use express.json. So with this, it will be able to capture data from the JSON we are sending in. So what we can do, we can say we want to log console.log request.body, right? And let's save this. We've saved that server has restarted. Send. We have an error. Console is not a function. It should be console.log, right? Send. So if you check now, you see we have the data they sent through the payload, right? So all we want to do is to say constant email is what request.body. This is request.body.email, right? And then constant password is request.body.password. I hope I'm communicating with someone. So we know this is the password the user inputted. Okay, sorry. This is the email the user inputted and the password the user inputted. Let's put the password here as well. Let's say password of this user is password. So what we want to do is to say if user.email is not equals to the email the user sent, right? Or this is how to do or user.password is not equals to the password to the user sent, is not equals to yes. Then we want to return an error. We want to say response dot resend an error. So we want to say response.status is 401. 401 is authentication. Then .json is success is false, right? And then message is email or password is incorrect, right? So what I want to do now is to come back here, send the request, everything still works. Let's change the password to 123, send. We now have an error, right? Which means the password is not correct. Now we've been able to capture the value the user entered, compare it to the one we have. If it is not correct, we are returning this response. Let's put a return here. We are returning this response, and if it is correct, it will continue executing till it gets here. Right? Let's send it again. Password, email or password is incorrect, and then send. Send the correct one. It is not working. Are you getting me? So one thing we can also do is that we can destructure this guy by saying constant email and password should be gotten from request.body. Right, so we can remove these two guys. It should be email. Right, so this was the same thing as the two lines I just removed. Capture the email and password from request.body and then use it here from request.body objects. Again, from request.body object. So send this again, it should still work. Send this, it should still work. A moment. A moment, a moment, a moment, a moment, a moment. I'm still here. Just give me a moment. Okay. Okay. So now we've handled login. Let's undo. Let's see if we can do something. Okay. So now we have been able to undo request handling. Okay, so another thing I have noticed here is that we are having, if we have many routes now in a project, if we have different routes, that means the way we are going to have many. This file will be very long. This index.js will be very, very long. So what do? We can split them into different files. We can split them into different files. And how do we do that? We can come to we can use the MVC pattern. Come in. The MVC pattern. And what's the MVC pattern? That's the model view and controller. Model view controller. So what we can do is to create a new folder for routes, right? Create a new folder for controllers. And for view, we are not using view. For models, we've not gotten there. What's the controller folder I created? Controllers. Yeah. So now we have the routes folder and the controllers folder. So inside the routes folder, we can use alt. We can create a file called alt.js. Sorry, a file alt.js, which will undo every routing that has to do with authentication. That means the login, the registration, forgot password, sending OTP, and those ones. It will be handled by this route. And how do we go about that? We can come to this route and say constant express is express, or let me say import express from express. Right, so now we have express here. We can now say router. Constant router is what? Express dot router. Right. So we can say we can bring this login route that we have here and bring it here. So instead of this being app.post, it will be router.post. And at the end of the day, we want to export this our router by saying module.export router. So the point of this exporting is that this thing we just did here we'll be able to use it in another file, right? So just like we imported from express module, we can come here and import from our alt module as well, alt.js. Am I doing something? Hold on. So this alt here that we did, we had to export default router. So it will export this router as the default file so that in the index file we can say import routes. Import alt routes from where? We have it in routes alts, right? So now we have our alt routes here. This dot here means route is in the same folder with this file, right? Route is in the same folder with index. They are both in the index folder. So what do? here that we have login, instead of having login, we can just say app.use auth routes, right? And we can then remove this our login route from here. Now we are having an error, can't find module auth. That's serious. I feel like we are missing something in our setup. If I come to packages.json, I already have this, which is what we want. Okay, can't find module index.js. Do you mean auth.js? Where is this? Inside auth and inside index. Let's add .js here. And yes, we are good. So that was because we didn't add .js to this. So if we send this request again, we should be good, which means everything still works. If I comment this out, send, we see cannot post login. So which means our routing works. If you have another file we want to use, we can say, so this one would undo auth, this one would undo users or user.js, which means the user requests. So for now, we are dealing with auth. And again, login, everything still works as expected. Again, this login now, if tomorrow we have many login routes, we are going to have an issue. And why is this one here? We are going to have an issue because the file will become too long. So what do? We have a controller. We can say auth controller or auth.controller.js, right? And inside this controller, we want to export a function. So we can say export constant login, which is a function, right? So what do? Let's copy our login function from here. Say our login, right, is this function. So what do? We can now come to this place and say when we call login, first of all, we want to import the login. We want to import login from come out of the route folder, go to controllers and pick auth.controller.js. So we want to use login. So we move this function from here and say login, right? So which means when they hit this login route, right, you should go to this login function inside the auth controller, and this is what will undo the login. So let's come to our post one again, send the request, everything still works as expected. Let me comment it out from inside this controller. We're already having an error safe. Let me just comment things inside it out. And yes, if I send this, we should have one weird error. So this will time out because we are not sending a response. And that shows our implementation still works. So we are making this file more cleaner. We have the auth route here, right, which is /login. But if you notice, if you're observant, you notice some websites have auth login, auth sign up, auth forgot password, right? So how do we do that? Since we know that everything that is relating to auth will be inside this auth.js, all we can do is to go to this app.index.js and say I believe when we go to alt, we want to use alt routes, right? So any request that has alt, that starts with alt, we use alt routes. And then inside alt route, it will now start looking for the other parts. So if I come here, send, I should have 404 first. 404 because /login is not found. But if I go to alt login and send, everything still works as expected. Let me remove this, guys. Everything still works as expected. Am I communicating? So this is our route. This is our controller. The actual logic can sit in the controller. It can sit in the controller. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the controller, but it shouldn't be in the route and it shouldn't be in the index.js. It can either be in the controller or the service class or in the service, right? The best standard, the standard practice is for it to be in the service. But for now, not to make things too complex, we just work with the alt controller. So another method we can have here is register, right? So which is a request response. Is so for register, we are expecting some few things from the payload. We're expecting the name, the email, and password, right? And then we can say request that these guys will be coming from request.body, right? So what can we do? We can just say, if we have a service that creates user, we can say constant user is name, email, name is name, email is email, password is password, right? And after that, we are returning a response to the front end, this response. So this time, okay, let's create an ID for our user. Let's say the ID is 10. So this time user is user and the token is token. Registration successful. Right. And then response.status code is 201, which means created, and then JSON of response data. Right. So if I send this request, on Postman, we're working with sign up, right? Or register. We should still be having 404 because we've not declared the routes. So how do we declare the routes? Let's come back to the auth.js and say router.posts register should route us to register, and you can see it is now auto imported from the auth controller. So let's try this request again. So we have everything working. Though we didn't provide enough data for it, but it still worked. So that brings us to form validation to confirm that they are giving you enough data for what you need. From that validation in Express, how do we do that? We can first of all use the basic method by saying if not name or not email or not password, right? We want to do what? We want to return a response of status code of 400 with a JSON of success is false, and then message is what? All fields are required. So if I come to this place again with our postman, send the request, you can see all fields are required. I think we need the name too. So name is Ayomide Michael. send this request, everything still works. Let's remove password, and our validation still does works. So this is just to confirm that they submit everything. There's data type validation, right? You may need some custom rules. You may need some custom rules. So what do? We can first of all check if not name or name.length. Name.length is less than 3. If you didn't submit the name, or you submitted the name and the total length of the name you submitted is less than 3, we want to return a response of status 400 again. JSON of success is false. Message is name must be at least 3 characters if I'm communicating with someone. So if I come to postman again, send, everything should still work. Let's reduce the length of the name to 2 characters. And now we have name must be up to 3 characters. So we've confirmed that works. Now for email, after we've confirmed that name works, we can now come and say, if not email, if you didn't submit an email, if not email, or you submitted an email, but it doesn't includes at, all emails you have at something.com. It doesn't include, so we have to put not here, not emails.include, right? So email dot includes, it's supposed to be includes. Yes, includes at. So if the email has at, this will be true. And if it doesn't, this will be false. So if you didn't submit the email, not email, there is no email, or it is not, or it doesn't include at. So what do? We can say we want to return a response of status code is 400 again. And then let me just copy this guy. And then say, please enter a valid email address. Right? If I send this request, it should still work. Let me remove this at. And you can see our validation still works. Please enter a valid email address. That is that for the email for now. And then we have the password. And we have the password. We have the password. So what we want to check is if you didn't enter password, or the password you entered dot length is less than 6. Is less than 6 again. Password must be up to 6 characters. Right? Let's come back and send the request. So our password is up to 6 characters. Let me remove the word, and our validation still works. Yeah, our validation still works. Okay. Let's check for something else. So usually you won't be checking for validations like this. This is a very long process. Remember, I told you, if there's something you want to do and you feel like if you need to start doing that manually, it will be a lot of work, there's most likely a package for it. So for this context of form validation, we can use a package called Zod. Zod. So Zod is for form validation. Zod is TypeScript first validation library. So how do we do this? Let's install Zod, npm install Zod, create a new terminal here, and npm install Zod. So we've installed one package. How do we use it? Hold on. Okay. So how do we use it? First of all, let's create our schema and say um and say register schema is a Zod object, z.objects, right? If you check that documentation, it should be there. This is it. So we are getting, I don't know. Let me import this at the top. So we are getting everything. This star means everything as Z, right? From Zod. So that is why I have Z dot object here. So what I can do, I can say objects, import object from Zod, and I'll have this. But the way it usually is, the way we usually use it is get all as Zod, as Z rather. So Z means Zod. So this Z means this Z will come as an object and we'll be able to access all other methods or attributes that Zod has. So how do we define our schema? We can say name. The name is z.string, right? Which means this name must be a string and it must have a minimum of 3 characters, right? Again, we have the email. Email is z.string again, and it must be an email. Okay, so this declaration is depreciated, and when something is depreciated, it means it is outdated. It will still work if you use it, but you should try not to use it. So how do we go about this? We don't have to set string here. Just say z.email, and it will handle the validation. And again, for the password, we have z.string. Password is a string, and then minimum length is 6. So once we have it, we can say registration schema dot pass. I believe I'm correct. So what we pass in? We pass in the value, which is the request.body. So we pass in the object, the value we want to validate, which is the one they sent in. Are you getting me? As at this time, we don't have these guys yet. We just want to confirm they've submitted everything they want. You need to submit. This is register.schema.pass this, and then let's send the request again. Is our server still running? Yes. Let's send the request again. Let's reduce this. And we have an error. We have one funny error. Zod error, code too small, minimum unicorn. So our validation does works, but the response doesn't seem like what we want. So what can we do? We can say try. We can say try and catch. So which means try and catch means we want this system to try this thing, and then if you have an error, catch it. So what do we do when we catch that error? We want to return a response, the status, right? of 400. Are you getting me? And then .json. So what can we do? Our object as usual, success is false. Success is false, right? And what else? Message. We'll now get the message from, if you notice now, this zone error has an attribute called message. We'll now get the message from it to say error.message. And we can also have an array of errors that says error.errors. I believe that's correct and should work. So if we send this request, so we have some funny things here. So this thing is a JSON. This error message seems like a JSON. This error message seems like a JSON. So what we can do is to say error data is what? JSON.parse pass error dot think message, right? And I can console.log error data. So let's send this. Now we have a very funny error. Error not found. Okay, ERL. Send console.log. Send again. So yes, it does work. And then we can say this guy should be error data dot message, right? And let's send this again. What's happening now? Let's log console.log error data dot message, right? And send. I believe we have that here. Undefined. Why? Again, let's log the error data itself. Okay, error is an array. It is an array, and inside it is an object. So what we can do is to say first error, let's say first error and first error. Or let's do it this way. Let's say there are some validation errors, right? And then in the error, we have the error data. In the errors, rather, we would have the error data, and we should be good if I'm correct. Yes, so there are some validation errors, and then for each validation errors that we have, they have the error message. The origin is because we want it to be a string. What's the code? Too small, minimum is 3. So I think what we can do here is to say dot map. Did I teach you dot map? I taught you. I said it was to manipulate the data an object is returning. So what we can do, we can say the key. So this is errors. Error. We want to return an object. Am I correct? Or let's just leave it the way it is, not to overcomplicate things. Let's just leave it the way it is. Our validation is working. We still have a long way to go. The validation is working. Every rule we set here is working. So we can remove this validation that we did manually. We can remove these guys that we did manually. And then inside this place, we are collecting the email, name, email, and password, right? Then again, if we start using if we start using this whole validation logic, this particular one, if we start using it everywhere, let's imagine we come to login to, and then let's copy the validation we did here and bring it here and say we expect email and password. And then if they are not correct, we are already duplicating the code. We are already repeating ourselves here. So what can we do? We can create a new folder called middleware. So this brings us to middleware. And what are middlewares? I think after middleware, we just close for the night. Middleware is a software that acts as a bridge connecting different applications and middleware in backend. Okay, middleware in backend is a software that acts as an intermediary layer between the client requests, which is the one we are sending on Postman, between the client's requests and the server final handler, which is this final handler. So the middleware will sit between this request, this guy, this Postman guy, and this one, and this controller action. So that is the best place to do our validation, right? So what was the first validation we want to do? It's still this one. Still this one. So we want to create a new file called validate.middleware.js, right? This is going to export this is going to export a function called validate. I'm sorry, validate. So, or let me say validate middleware. No, validate schema. Yes, validate schema. And so a middleware would always have access. Okay, a middleware. What am I doing? First of all, let's declare the middleware, the function. So this is a function, right? And this is what we want the function to do, this try and catch. But here we don't have register request. Let's say when we call this function, it is going to receive the schema, or let me say register schema, right? And we have register schema here, and should also receive the request and response just like we usually have it. Are you getting me now? So how do we use this middleware? We want to come to, I think it's auth. We want to come to auth and say import validate schema from validation. Everything is imported here. So what do we want to do? We want to say when a post request goes to login, before logging in, you should validate schema. So it will run this first before running login. And validate schema expects our register schema. And how do we do that? How do we get a register schema? Let's create a new file, a new folder called schemas or validations. Let's call it validators. And then call it register.schema.js, right? So we are going to copy our register schema from here. This is login. This is register. This is still login. This is register. And put it here. Just that the only difference is that we want to export it so that we can use it in other files. And we want to import Zoot. We want to import Zoot here. Import all as Z from Zoot, right? So that we can come to this auth.js and say validate schema. Which schema are we validating? Register schema, right? Okay, I'm putting it in login. It should be in register. Register schema. So this is a middleware. That's the middleware. I'm coming back to it. So what else can we do? We can remove everything that has to do with validation from our controller. So by the time we are executing this logic, we are sure that this middleware would have validated the data. So what do we do? Let's come here. So the validation still does work because the way I'm sending this, everything works. Let's change the name. So Ayomide Michael and send. Now we're having an error. Not even an error. The request is not responding. And why is it not responding? If we check this guy, where is it? If we check this alt route, validate schema, it is doing what we expect it to do, right? So after doing it, what else? We are not sending any response here, aside from when there's an exception, right? And when there's no exception, what do we do? Middlewares receive something. Apart from the request and response, they also receive next. And what is next? Next is just like the function that will run after, just telling the system to run, okay, we are good here. You can run the next one. And when you say the next one, this is the next one. After this guy is register. So once our validation is completed, where is it? Yes, once our, where is it? Here. No, not here. Middleware. Okay. Yeah. So once our validation is completed here, we want to do what? We want to run next. So this is done. Move to the next thing, right? Let's go back to Postman, and you see everything still works because validation was successful and it has moved to the next logic in the route. If we have another middleware that we want to run, we can still put it here. Another middleware. Before finally running our logic. But for now, we don't have another middleware. What we want to do is to also bring the validation for login. We want to bring the validation for login to another validator and say, do that, and say login.schema.js, system.js, right? And I want to change this to login schema. Again, I want to export it so we can use it in another file and import all as Z from Zood, right? So we have our login schema here. And on the alt, we want to say again, validate schema. Which schema are we validating? Login schema. Login schema. We don't have login schema imported yet. So where do we import it from? Import login schema from so places. From login. Would have an error here. Login schema is not defined. It's not an error. Login schema is not defined because we called it login, not login schema. So change the name to login schema and we should be good. So what we can do here again is to remove the validation logic because we are sure that our middleware already handles that for us. Are we all still connected? Okay. So can we touch one more thing before we go, or we are good for the day? Are we all connected? Do you want us to touch something else before we go, or we are good for today?
Let us digest this
You
one
can
today.
just stop here, sir.
Okay. Okay, so let me just reiterate on the things we did today. First of all was bringing our, what's it called? Our normal JS app to Express. And from there, we started working with reading data from JSON, from the request body. And then we started taking some of the routes into a different file where which is specifically for the routes. And doing that, we were able to create a controller that handles our different logics. So this is export, this is login. And also we see that we were duplicating validation logics all over the places inside two controllers already, inside two controller functions already. So what did you do? We take out the validation schemas, put it in a separate file dedicated for them, and then created a middleware for validation. So this will run before the actual logic in the controller runs, and then this validates the request they are sending in the payload. So how do we use our validator middleware? Come to our routes, which is here, validate schema, right? Typically here, so when you have in the index dot, in this place, we have auth dot routes. Typically, when the user has finally logged in and they send a request, you want to have app dot use, let's say, we call it app, right? I prefer to call it app, so the request to be like something like app dot books, right? So app dot books, and then we now want to say user routes. But before calling the user route, we want to confirm that the user making this request is actually logged in. So we'd have a middleware here that will say validate auth, or let's say auth middleware, right? So this one will validate that the user is actually logged in before sending the request to the route. Are you getting me? Again, this validation will have the next method. So once you receive next, you know that, okay, you can now proceed to this route. So inside the route, we can still have middlewares there. We can have as many as possible middlewares in an application before the actual logic is being run. It depends on the number of validations you want to have. I think this is a good stop for the day. I'll be taking questions now. If you have any question, you can. Okay, before we go, we can push this thing to GitHub. I hope we know. Do we all know about GitHub?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can push our code to GitHub by creating a new repository. Creating a new repository and saying, what's the name? Dive 2.5 or 2.5 or 2.5 Node.js Express. Who owns it? I own it. I think Dive owns it. Right? It should be a public repo. What else? Create. So what we can do, we can say git init. The commands are already here. So we'll come to our terminal, paste git init. Git init. So this will initialize GitHub. This folder may not be visible on your own end. I made some configs to make it visible. You don't have to worry about it if you can find it. What you should be checking is that these guys are colored. So once we have that, we want to commit our first commit. But before committing, we want to do something. This node modules includes, let's even open it, revealing finder, get info. So at the moment it is 10.20 something, sorry, 10.2 MB, but most times it will be very large, up to maybe 1 or 2 gig. We don't want to push that to GitHub. So what do? We create a new file called .gitignore, right? So this gitignore tells GitHub which of the files or folder you should exclude. So which one do we want to exclude? We want to exclude the node modules. Node modules, right? You can see the color has changed, which means it is being excluded. So we want to, let me just use this guy. We want to add git add dot would add everything here to GitHub tracking, except from the ones we've excluded. Git add, and then we want to commit and say git commit n, that's the message for first commit, and then git push let me just use this publish branch. Are you serious? I've not set the origin. So use this command, this one that has git remote add origin, to tell your local GitHub that, guy, this is the repository we are using. So use this and publish branch. No, no, I don't want. So if I refresh this page, our file should be here. But the only thing you notice that is not here is the node module, because we excluded it. So what we are supposed to do is to create a readme dot markdown, which is a document for, so which is the document that I'll show here, right? Let me add the readme file from here. Yeah. I think we'll just continue with this later in our next class. So the readme file is just a guide on how to set up the project. So once you clone the project, just run npm. Let me even delete it now. So when you install this, when you clone this project, this is what you have. If you want your npm, your node modules, just run npm install, and your node module will come back without you having to push it to GitHub, because the files here doesn't change. And why does it not change? Because these guys are logged. This application, this what's it called? This Express, these dependencies we are using have their versions, and that version means this project is using this version. Anytime you install it, any day, it is this same code it will generate in the node module, so you don't have to worry it. And then packages.logs, package.log means, okay, this application is using this version, using this version of dependencies. And yeah, that is all for today. Does anyone have any question? Okay, if there's no question, I think it's good to call it a night. Thank you everyone for joining once again. See you again next week. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.